Oh, Volkswagen, what are you doing to me? All right, so a little voice overlay here. This is my first time doing this, but rather than describe it on the screen, it just makes more sense to do it this way. It's clear and there's less profanity, of course. This bearing had welded itself to the brakes. It was just simply not coming off today. So after an exhaustive attempt with, you know, screwdrivers and a puller and all other things, I ended up having to resort to using a 3-pound sledge just to whack it. And the reason it had to come off in the first place, obviously, because there's two bolts behind it. One was accessible, as you can see, and the other one wasn't, or the other two weren't. Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, it ended up getting an absolute ass whooping. So, which was actually a little bit gratifying, given how awful the thing was. All right, after getting all that junk off of there and the bearings and whatnot, finally able to get this kingpin holder out and these link pins. This little guy in my hand right here is called a link pin, and it's what holds that whole assembly to the drag arms, or the trailing arms, I guess they call them. Just some bushings in there, and I do end up measuring everything and seeing if they're within tolerances. The kingpins and the link pins are all the same diameter, so there usually would be some play in them given it's a 6-year-old car, but upon looking at everything, it looks like they were all done a number of years ago, but there was very little play in everything actually. But just as a precaution and just kind of a feel-good gesture, I took these link pin bushings out just to replace them. They did have some scoring in them, but not very much. And I figured I'm putting new link pins in, might as well do the bushings as well. So So you keen-eyed individuals out there will know automatically looking at this that that is not in fact a hydraulic press. That is a hammer and a well-loved socket. Uh, it's not the best way to remove those bushings. It's definitely the noisiest. But what it did do, in the absence of a hydraulic press, they actually came out quite easily. I don't recommend this though. I know there's a lot of sites that have guys doing that, but to me, it's just unnecessary beating, and it's just hard on everything involved. And anytime you solve a problem with a hammer, it's usually going to have a pretty sloppy result. So yeah, next time I do one of these cars, I will definitely have a hydraulic press. All right, a little rotation here, and we can start taking the kingpin out. Like I said before, the kingpin runs top to bottom in there, and it's what actually the spindle pivots on. It is in there really tight, and you got to hit that thing like it owes you money. So it's a fair amount of motivation you got to give it. And of course, there's grease fittings that feed into the center of it, which what lubricates the entire assembly. So once we clean that out, then we get to whacking. All right, so here's the entire front steering area exploded view. I got the bushings up top there. I got the kingpin in the center, those two link pins, some washers, or actually spacers. And then here I got the actual kingpin assembly. So this part here has two bushings in it that the kit comes with. And I need to either remove those ones or mic them and see if they're within spec. And then I can reuse them again. They actually were in there pretty good and everything felt pretty tight. So I'm just gonna see with the micrometer where they're at and probably avoid changing them if I don't have to. If I do have to, I'll just go into a machine shop in town here and have them press them in and then ream them to spec. I just love editing. So here we are, our new parts ready to go in. There's the spindle, the 2.5 drop spindle. Everything's all cleaned up and ready to go. We have those two bushings that we didn't need there, the kingpin and the link pins and all their bushings as well. So let's get started to put that stuff back in. All right, putting it back together again. We've got a series of washers and spacers here, but this is the actual kingpin holder. It's got two sides on it. It is a directional piece. There's the flat side and the beveled side. Flat goes towards the chassis, beveled goes towards the caliper, or the spindle, I guess. So this cavity here is where it slides into. We've got a few washers, like I said, that have to go in there. There's a small alignment washer, which has a hole in it at the top. There you go. And then we have another one that'll fit on top of that, which is a synthetic, which basically holds grease. Yeah, there you go. And then we have another one, a little dust cover for it, which is directional. It has a couple of alignment tabs on it as well. It is a little difficult to put this whole thing together. It does tend to want to slide out on you, and it's kind of like holding a hamburger, and you squeeze too hard on one side, and all the goop falls out the other side. So it's a bit like that. It does take a number of efforts to get it done right. I end up probably trying, I don't know, I'm going to say maybe 8 or 10 times. It does end up working out though, but it is a little frustrating at about the 7th or 8th time. It's just a little bit of grease, not too much grease, otherwise you end up losing it all. The tolerances are pretty tight in there. And I don't think I'm successful here. I think this one might be one of my many, let's wait for it. Yeah, failures. There you go. Anyways, we keep going. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is we have to punch in that kingpin. So like I said before, these link pins are actually the same diameter, so they actually work quite well to punch them in. And they are a bit sacrificial. You don't have to worry about damaging them at all. I'd never like striking machined parts with a hammer. I'd say a hammer is probably the worst tool in the world for putting fine cut things together, but in this instance it works. So yeah, we punch that thing in, and once it's in, then we can put the link pins bushings in, and that's a little nicer job. This one here is quite terrible. Okay, so what you're looking at here is the back side of the link arm. So what I'm going to do is put these little bushings in there. I'm just going to point out here, there's a little oil sort of greasing hole that goes and lubricates that whole thing. And I swear that's why these cars get so many miles on them, is because it is completely serviceable. It's got lots of opportunities to maintain oil and lubricate all these moving metal parts. So that turned out pretty good. We've got the link pin bushings here right where they're supposed to be. It's supposed to be zero clearance on both sides. And then we have some little washers, really thin, like 1/2 mil washers that have to go in there to space it. And that's part of how you align the spindle with the whole front end steering componentry. So you either have 4 on one side, 4 on the other, or 5 on one side and 3 on the other. This year of car has 8 altogether. Older cars have 10. So I chose to voice over this part because there was no usable language coming out of my mouth. It was all profanity and just expletives and whatever else, and it's probably better I just do the voiceover instead. The long and the short of it is, this Vice and this piece of German engineering don't play well together. So this was a absolute ridiculous half an hour of frustration trying to get this whole thing to work with a drop spindle. It just simply won't fit anywhere. So I edited most of this out too, because it's not even easy to watch. You ever watch those YouTube videos, the fails, where the guy's backing his boat into the lake and he's got his trailer hooked up, and the whole boat and trailer and everything and truck go into the lake, and you see that look of absolute defeat on the guy's face? That's much like the face expression I have right now. This thing nearly got the best of me today. All right, so there it is, all put together again through the magic of editing again, but everything's back in place. It all moves freely. The little grease washer's in there, so it actually turned out pretty good, other than being extremely frustrating. Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in again. This is for episode number 8. This should be probably second in the rebuilding portion of the videos. So we're finally at a point now where we've got the chassis completely painted up. It's got its undercoating on it, 2 coats of undercoating, and we hit the whole thing with POR 15. So it's very well protected for the next half of its life. Where I'm at now though is with the spindles all built down here. And this is stuck in my vise now. I actually saw this on another YouTuber. He was showing how he holds a thing in his vise. I thought that's just brilliant. So just a piece of 2x8 and you screw it through here, and yeah, it works pretty good. So so begins the rebuilding of this. So the torsion bars will go in, and then I'll put the spindles in. Now I know I've already done some, I've already gone a little too far with the spindles actually. They need to be put on with the arms, and then we can fine tune them, and I have to measure them and shim them to make sure they're the right gaps. Right now I've got 4 and 4 of the little shims on both sides of these pins here, but that's subject to change. Once I do the measurements, there's a graph you can use, and that'll tell you exactly how many pins you're supposed to have based on the gap of the separation. So yeah, you just measure it, and if you have a 5 mil gap, you put 1 shim in or whatever it works out to. But we'll get to that. So let's just get this thing tucked together, and we'll see how we are with fit, and how all these pins slip together.